This video was sponsored by nobody. There is no code for 20% off, or even for 10%. This is Canada. Back in 1775, it was attached to the British Crown. Going south, this is the United States of America. In 1775, the United States was also attached to the British Crown, but they wanted out. These 13 colonies tried to invade Canada. More specifically, they tried to invade Quebec. Let's back up a bit. These countries have perhaps the best relationship two countries can have. They share the longest international border, they have numerous trade agreements, and they have several military ties to each other. Not to mention, the Prime Minister of Canada had to think for 21 seconds and said, when asked about what he thought of President Donald Trump.
You've been reluctant to comment on the words and actions of the US President.
But things were different back then. The British controlled the two colonies. Here's the story. The date is June 14th, 1775. The colonial Americans have just created an army. They know that they have almost no chance of defeating the most powerful army in the world, the British. Except, they notice one thing. The British province of Quebec is not well defended. The Americans know that this is probably their only shot to one-up the British, so they do the smart thing. They decide to invade Quebec. Genius. What better option was there? The Continental Congress enlists 4 people to spearhead the invasion. Now, the Continental Army has decided to invade Canada. How do they go about it? They split into 2 main parties. One party was led by General Philip Schuyler, and the other by General Benedict Arnold. The party led by Schuyler, we'll refer to this as Party Number 1, went a little like this. With modern boundaries, it looks a little like this. However, there's this part, but we'll get back to that in a bit. He embarked from Fort Ticonderoga, where the Dixon Ticonderoga pencils are processed, in upstate New York on August 28, 1775, with about 1,200 soldiers. However, Schuyler caught the coronavirus, and since he was a law-abiding citizen, and since invading is non-essential travel, he didn't invade. Actually, that's a lie.
Fake, disgusting news.
In truth, no one really knows what he got. He just got sick and couldn't lead his troops. General Richard Montgomery replaced Schuyler, and Schuyler returned to Fort Ticonderoga. Montgomery's troops crossed Lake Champlain and entered British Canada. The first major fort they encountered was Fort St. Jean, which today is St. Jean-sur-Richelieu, a town with a population of about 95,000 people. Have fun laughing at me for my pronunciation. Throughout early September, the Americans settled around the fort. The British inside the fort were at their wits' end. Honestly, how would you feel if there were hostile forces surrounding your house and you couldn't get out? Finally, on September 17th, they attacked. On October 6th, a cannon was sent in from Fort Ticonderoga. In late October, another 500 men came in from New York and Connecticut to back the Americans. Unfortunately for the British, their backup troops didn't get to the fort in time. At this point, the British realized that they were outnumbered, and outcannoned, don't forget. So on November 3rd, the British surrendered, and the British General Guy Carleton left for Montreal. Now, the Americans have taken over a fort in Canada. They march on towards Montreal. They decide, however, to stop at Pointe-aux-Trembles, a suburb of Montreal, to wait for the other party. Now, about the second party. It's led by Benedict Arnold, who you might know from various books and movies, the traitor, but before he was a traitor, he was a general. His party was pretty much a disaster. There was starvation, disease, that kind of stuff. He started out with 1,100 men. By the time they reached Point Levis, where the two parties would meet, his force was reduced to 600. The two forces meet with each other, and they march on towards Montreal. The British General Carleton, who has just left the aforementioned Fort St. Jean, decides that the city is indefensible, and leaves. The Americans walk in, find out that the British have left, and are overjoyed. The Americans have taken over Montreal. They then march on to Quebec City, the final obstacle. Party Number 1, headed by Montgomery, attacked from the west, while Party Number 2, headed by Arnold, attacked from the south. Party Number 1 promptly retreated after their commander, Montgomery, was killed at the very beginning. This painting supposedly depicts that scene, even though the painter wasn't there. Incidentally, this painting is based off of the original painting, The Death of General Wolfe, where General Wolfe is shot right at the moment of victory. The second party, led by Arnold, went a little bit better. Unfortunately, Arnold was wounded, and one Daniel Morgan took his place. He didn't fare much better. He pretty much sat outside the city for 2 months since he didn't have many troops and weapons, and surrendered. The American mission failed, but this was just the beginning.
After several more years of arduous battles, the Americans finally defeated the British on September 3, 1783, at Yorktown, with the Treaty of Paris. Which Treaty of Paris? That's up to you.
If you want to succeed like the Americans did, you can use. This would be the perfect spot for a smooth segue into a sponsorship. However, since this video was sponsored by no one, I fully expect you to subscribe. Thank you for watching Explained. New videos every other Friday.